And joining us now, MSNBC political analyst and former aide to the George W. Bush White House, Elise Jordan, and former chief spokesperson for Vice President Harris and co-host of The Weekend right here on MSNBC, Symone Sanders Townsend. And also with us, MSNBC political analyst Juanita Tolliver. So, Symone, we don't know who these people are voting for, but there is a huge influx of women voters, number one. Every referendum and every midterm and statewide races since Dobbs has shown a big outpouring of women voters. How does the Harris campaign respond to this? Are they worried about the men in Arizona? Or is it impossible to really define by gender who these people are voting for?
I wouldn't say impossible, but I would caution people, right? I mean, generally, people hear, oh, a large early vote. That must be great for Democrats, but Republicans are voting too. And I think it's important that people note that. There are women, disproportionately, to be clear, white women, who have consistently, I think, helped keep the Republican Party apparatus afloat when it comes to presidential politics. But men have also voted for Democrats too, like white men have voted for Democrats. So it's not as cut and dry as I think people would like to believe, but I do believe the Dobbs issue is real and it has an effect. Tremaine Lee has a package today from talking to voters in Georgia, black men specifically, who are getting out there and encouraging people to vote. And two, because of the issue of reproductive rights, reproductive freedom, two of the men that he spoke to in his package, their wives died giving birth. Wow. And so this is not a theoretical conversation for people across the country. It's real, especially when we look at many of these battleground states. In places like Wisconsin, abortion has been an animating issue. It was very animating for Janet Protasewicz, who was elected state Supreme Court justice post-2022, right, in 2023 election. It's real for people in Georgia. It's real for voters in Arizona, right? Don't forget the state senator, Eva Birch, who had to go and explain to her colleagues on the floor of the state legislature about an abortion, and she herself had to leave the state to get the care that she needed when that care was abortion. The doctors wouldn't give it to her. South Carolina, North Carolina, Florida. So I do think that Dobbs is going to be an animating issue, and for women especially across the country, whether you live in one of the states I mentioned or not, there is a sense of fear, kind of, and for younger women, anger, because we're living in a country where I have less rights than my mother's generation.
And ground zero, of course, was Texas, because that was even pre-Dobbs, those restrictions.
I don't know about you, Andrea or Katie, but in all the elections I've covered, I have never heard so much conversation about low propensity voters, first-time voters. And it was interesting when I was in line at the MSG rally talking to Republican women. And they fell largely into two categories. One was, I like the tough guy. The other one was, I know he shouldn't say all those things, but he doesn't really mean it. But when he says things like, I am going to take care of you, whether you like it or not, I always go back in these closing days, low propensity voters, first-time voters, what lands will that land? I mean, I feel like abortion is already baked in. Right. But what's going to move those voters, those women?
Well, I think first, abortion rights, as Symone laid out, the only addendum to that is the fact that abortion rights are on the ballot in 10 states, including Arizona, including Nevada and Florida, and that's going to be mobilizing. But when Donald Trump makes statements like that, it brings up old dirt to a brand new audience. The most recent TikTok trend that I love to see is people listening to that Access Hollywood tape. They don't need to add anything about it because they hear Donald Trump.
The younger generation is not familiar. First-time voters.
They're hearing it for the first time.
Familiar with it.
Because the language is similar, whether they like it or not.
Right. The language is similar. And it's coming from a man who was found liable of sexual assault, right? Like, that is the picture that young people are seeing. And so they're not only getting this information in real time from Donald Trump, but they're revisiting some of the old damage that he has and statements that he has said and made, and realizing and internalizing that in the context of this moment. And that is powerful. And remember, young people flexed a muscle in 2022. They delivered Democrats history-defying results in that midterms. And so I think they are standing an opportunity to show up again in 2024.
You know, it's interesting. We're talking a lot about the presidential race and all the swing states, but I think we should keep an eye on Texas and what happens with the Senate race there. We have Colin Allred, who's challenging Ted Cruz. The abortion issue is not on the ballot. There's not a measure that has abortion on the ballot in Texas, but Texas has the most restrictive abortion law on the books. We just reported yesterday from ProPublica on a woman who died because doctors wouldn't help her with her miscarriage. She had a 17-week-old fetus pushing against her cervix. Doctors would not do anything until that fetus died within her, and then removed it, left her open to possible infection. She came back 3 days later and died of sepsis in the hospital. And I was talking to the ProPublica reporter who was reporting this out, lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and she said, watch what women do in Texas on this issue. And because they don't have it on the ballot, they might use their voice in a vote against Ted Cruz. The expectation is not that Kamala Harris would win Texas, but they could use it in a vote against Ted Cruz, who is already very unpopular, even in that red state. Elise, I want to talk to you about white women. Specifically, you've done so much reporting and so many focus groups talking to women in this election. Have you seen any change? Usually white women vote for Republicans. They've helped Donald Trump win. Any change?
I think we're seeing it with low propensity voting white women. We're seeing it in the registrations in Texas, in the registrations across the country, especially young women. I think the most marked contrast from this summer when President Biden was the nominee and now Kamala Harris was women under 30 had no enthusiasm for voting for President Biden. They just felt so disconnected from him as a candidate. And now you look at the energy and the enthusiasm. And I think that that's where you really see in younger women, especially, and then older women who are incredibly incensed that their daughter's generation and their granddaughter's generation aren't going to have the same rights. And so I do think that it's had a lot of impact, and we're starting to see it. And
what about the collar counties in Pennsylvania? You know, the ones surrounding Philadelphia. Andrea, this question would be good for you as well.
Pennsylvania isn't as much of a gender divide in the polling so far, and we don't really know. I don't want to extrapolate too much based on early voting because these are people who already know how they're going to vote.
Except Hillary Clinton did not do well in those 5 counties, and so it wasn't enough to overcome the lead that Donald Trump had in red areas of the state, in more rural areas and other areas in central Pennsylvania, northeast Pennsylvania. And there is some reporting that it is motivating those suburban women. There's also an issue that the Harris campaign has been talking to some of us about, which is that some of these women, maybe not in Pennsylvania, but other in southern states and elsewhere, don't want to tell their husbands that they are voting for a woman, for Kamala Harris, and voting Democratic. And they've actually got, videos and all kinds of online efforts to say to people, you don't have to tell your vote is
Post-its in bathrooms saying you can keep it secret.
It is. I mean, I think that some people watching will hear you say that and say, oh, my goodness, who are these women? But it is actually a lot more prevalent than people would think. Now, I went to vote just yesterday, and I went with my husband. I was like, who you voting for? Okay, I wanted to check his ballot, honey, and just make sure I see what he was doing.
Your husband.
But my husband was all right. I didn't have any concerns, but I just know I wanted to be on record. But I will seriously say that it is real. Like I'm a fellow at Georgetown this semester, and many of my students, I was talking to them on Monday, and they were saying how, it took my mom years to tell my dad that she voted for John F. Kennedy, right? And so I do think that this is a thing that is happening. And in those collar counties, in Montgomery County specifically, Democrats netted 40,000 more votes out of that county from 2016 to 2020. And Joe Biden won it, and that helped him put him over the edge in that very close race in Pennsylvania. Melissa Murray and I, part of our Black Women American special, we went and talked to Black women in Montgomery County who are going to make the difference. The more seasoned Black women were definitely planning on voting. They were planning on supporting the Democratic ticket. And one of the women we spoke to was a Republican up until Donald Trump became the standard bearer in the Republican Party. And she said Donald Trump doesn't represent her.
Can I add something? I mean, when we're talking about, you mentioned the Access Hollywood tape, and you can link it to the whether they like it or not comment from the other day. And I think there's a lot of women out there who have a visceral reaction to hearing whether they like it or not, because they've had an experience of dealing with somebody in a negative way, whether they like it or not, whether it's on the playground or in their personal life or on the street or in their health care. You're gonna miscarry this baby and have to wait until the baby's heartbeat dies, whether you like it or not. Your health care is going to be at risk, whether you like it or not. I wonder if now those words from Donald Trump resonate differently among the female population, because before, when we were talking about Access Hollywood, a lot of women out there, and I spoke to them, said this is just the way boys talk.
No, it's
not.
not.
The way they talk.
And he said it was locker room talk.
And it was locker room talk. And now there's the experience of that, whether they like it or not, coming into the real world, especially on the issue of Dobbs, on women's health care. We have made these laws in legislatures, largely male legislatures in Republican states, over the objections of female health specialists to tell them what they can do with their bodies, whether they like it or not.
But also, I
a
just say
difference
that
now?
my nieces who are in their 20s, what's acceptable to them now in terms of language and what was I sucked up in my 20s, we sucked up in our 20s, is very different.
Explicitly. And so let's introduce the generational divide within the gender divide, because my 18-year-old niece will not stand for any of this behavior. And that's why she's not only motivated to vote, but she's talking to her friends about it. Those tangible, visceral, personal interactions that individuals and women and anybody who was facing any type of discrimination have faced, every time Donald Trump spews hatred, that violent rhetoric towards women, like he did with Liz Cheney, right? They feel that directly. Unfortunately, the level of violence against women, the threatening behavior, the rates of sexual assaults in this country and globally is so relatable. And the Harris campaign is smart to just replay Donald Trump's words. Replay Donald Trump's words with a montage of what he has promised to do next, whether that's tracking women's menstrual cycles, whether that's threatening to limit travel to people seeking abortion care, because it's not an idea anymore. It's reality.